Do you struggle with feeling abandoned, rejected, not enough? Okay, well, in today's video, I just want to share with you some key things that were highlighted in the book of Ephesians this morning as we were doing our reading and our devotional. If you don't know me, I'm Coach Kofia. I help women heal and thrive emotionally by God's grace after any type of breakup or divorce. It's very impromptu and just wanted to share some things that I think were important and were beneficial for me. So one of the things I struggled with in childhood is feeling out of place. I've always kind of felt out of place, and I always felt like I didn't belong. I always felt very different, right? There's really not a way to describe it, but I've always kind of felt different. And, growing up and going to like elementary school and, losing my best friend, my cousin, like at a very early age. After that, it was very hard for me to feel like I was understood. And so it just compounded, right? And so part of that is not necessarily having a dad to speak over your life and to encourage you. And so when I came into my relationship with God and seeing him as my father, if I can be honest, I felt like I was shortchanged. I felt like there were a lot of things that I missed out on. And I was upset about it, initially. But throughout a process, I feel like God has shown me how he has been there for me. And this is no knock on my father. He did the best that he could with the information he had going through the circumstances he went through. And so I get that. Definitely have forgiveness for, he just is human. But in my relationship with God, he began to show me who I was. And he began to pour into me, and he began to heal the places on the inside of me that I felt that I didn't even realize going out throughout life. It wasn't until I was in my 30s and 35 and having kids and going through divorce that I realized there were a lot of places on the inside of me that were not filled. They were empty. And we often refer to them as wounds. They were wounded places, basically beliefs about who I was and my ultimate value that were tied up in to the the things that I had in life or I didn't have in life. And so I began to go on this journey, and that's part of the reason why I help women heal and thrive emotionally, because I know what it's like to feel abandoned, to feel alone, to feel rejected, to feel like you're not enough. And I had to be honest. Like, I ultimately had to be honest about how I felt, which was very painful. It was very painful to come to a realization at 30 years old to realize, like, you don't have it. I didn't have it all together. I didn't have it all together. And I had responsibilities. I was taking care of kids, and I didn't even know who I was. Like, my identity was not there. And it was there, right? But it wasn't a true identity because it was based on outside circumstances, and it was based on being called a wife. It was based on what I had, based on my body, based on or not body. It was based on how much money I felt like I had, or how I was much better than other people. And those things fade, they change. And so at my divorce, it all came crumbling down. And I was left with figuring out who I was. And it was in those moments that God began to speak to me about who I was, what my identity was. Feeling like I had to have everything together to be worthy. And it wasn't until I began to go on this journey with God and he began to show me. We were reading in Ephesians, and it reminded me of that journey. It reminded me because Paul is writing to believers. And so just take this as a word of encouragement. You're a believer. you're going to have doubts. There are things that you have faced in your past. And maybe right now it's your breakup. Maybe right now it's your divorce. And so that is the big thing that you're like, oh my God, how am I going to make it through this? Well, 9 times out of 10, there are things that you have gone through that have influenced and affected what's happening now in your life. And it can feel very heavy to even think that you contributed to this circumstance. And I'm not saying it's your fault. Don't misunderstand me. What I'm saying is there are ways, there are beliefs that you have that I had to deal with. And although it is painful to face that I don't have it all together, or, you know, the fact that my dad wasn't there, it affected me more than I thought it did. And, you know, the choices that I made, the mistakes that I made, they affected me. They affected how I believed, what I believed about me. And so it's really getting to a place of accepting and acknowledging that you had a role to play. And it really takes us from being a victim to walking in the victory that Christ has provided. He has provided victory by his sacrifice in his life. And there are benefits to accepting his free gift. And a part of that is acknowledging the jacked upness that we were before him. And our impacts, our choices, our responsibility in that. Okay. And so Paul is writing to the church in Ephesians, and one of the things that he says is he talks about how in him we were also chosen, having been predestined according to the plan of him who works out everything in conformity with the purpose of his will, in order that we who were the first to hope in Christ might be for the praise of his glory. Listen, and you also were included in Christ when you heard the word of truth. So he is saying that God picked us, right? One of the things that God showed me throughout my divorce is that, and he downloaded, is a 21-day devotional. And maybe I need to bring that to you, right? If that's something that you would find beneficial and you want to go through that devotional, I will pull it from the website and put it here so you can download it. But he showed me that there were some key things about our identity in him. And one of them is that we were chosen. And to be chosen means we were picked. And to be picked means that we were thought to be valuable and enough and beautiful and amazing, right? And worthy. You were picked, so you are worthy. And even if a human doesn't pick you, even if a human rejects you, even if people don't step up to the plate to take responsibility for what they are supposed to do in your life or in the lives of your children, they were picked by God. They were chosen by God. And that in itself means you are worthy. That is what I wanted to share with you this morning. You are worthy. Remember that today. Okay? So go be great by what? Mastering what's on your plate. We'll talk soon. Remember, you're worthy. Act like it.